Kirsty and the Snowball Fight. One of the many things to be seen on snowy days were the sights of children throwing snowballs at each other. They also raced down hills on sledges while others made snowmen. Kirsty often saw them doing this when taking the morning passengers, and often wished that she could join in with them. When she told the others this, they just laughed. "Don't be so daft, Kirsty," snorted Edwin one evening in the shed. "Engines aren't the sort to go playing about in the snow." "I've known quite a few engines who end up getting buried in the stuff." "Thomas is one of them," added Leo. "How would you know?" Kirsty retorted. "Your region hardly gets any snow, and even if it did, you don't get much of it." "That's as may be," said Leo, "but engines aren't the sort to mess around with snow." Even so, Kirsty still wanted to play with the snow. The next morning, Kirsty was to collect some milk from the narrow gauge connection at Queen's Wharf. As she waited for Tiffany to arrive, she caught sight of some children building a snowman in the station playground opposite. Kirsty sighed. She was wishing more than ever that she could join in with them. "The others don't seem to like this snow, but I think it's rather beautiful." She closed her eyes and sighed again. Excuse me?" Kirsty blinked. Tiffany was staring at her from her line and had just shunted her milk vans into the exchange siding. "But some engines don't have time to daydream about playing in the snow. Pretty ridiculous if you ask me." And she trundled off to take on water. Kirsty harumphed. "What is the matter with everyone today?" she huffed. "Why does everyone have a distaste for snow?" But unknown to her, she didn't realise how soon she was going to find out. A short distance outside of Queen's Wharf, the line ran through a cutting, where trees loomed over most of it. It was a popular stretch in the summer, but since it was winter, they looked like giant claws without their leaves. Instead, large clumps of snow had settled on the branches. As Kirsty puffed cheerfully through it, she gazed up at the snow-covered hillside, icicles glinting in the sunlight from overhead branches covered in white. "Silly stick in the muds," she puffed, and blew a loud "peep, peep" on her whistle to let off her feelings. The blast of steam flew high into the air and up into the branches above. All of a sudden, "Blah! Help! I can't see!" wailed Kirsty. A large clump of snow, loosened from its branches by the steam, had fallen out of the trees and straight onto her. More snow, loosened by this fall, followed. Like a line of dominoes, it seemed the whole cutting was dumping its snow onto Kirsty. It covered her from funnel to footplate. She couldn't see at all. Her driver or fireman couldn't see either. By the time they could, it was too late. They couldn't know that the snow had slipped off the cutting in a drift and had blocked the line. The signalman had tried to warn them, but they'd missed the red signal completely. Just when Kirsty had blown the snow out of her eyes, she could see the drift looming up in front. "Ooh-ah!" she groaned. She tried to stop, but her brakes wouldn't hold her. Kirsty ploughed straight into the drift, and her wheels spun helplessly. She wasn't going anywhere. "Let me go!" she hissed, and tried to puff onwards, but she couldn't. She tried to go back, but she couldn't do that either. The snow held Kirsty in an icy grip. She was stuck. "What are we going to do now?" asked her fireman. "We can't phone for help. Telephone line's down," said her driver. Either we wait here, or melt our way out. Kirsty wasn't happy about this. But I'll use up all my water, she complained. Sorry, Kirsty, can't be helped, said her driver, opening the regulator. Unless you want to be a snow engine and block the line all day, we need to get you free. Kirsty hissed crossly. She wheeshed steam from her cylinders, feeling the snow turn to even colder slush, which trickled horribly down her wheels. Brrr! She shivered. I can see what others meant. Being stuck in the snow is not fun at all. It wasn't a huge drift, and soon Kirsty was able to move again. Her fireman sanded the rails. She gave a mighty effort, and at last pulled free of the snow. Kirsty was cold and miserable, and was beginning to wonder whether snow was really worth it. Fun for children, maybe, she puffed crossly. For engines, snow is nothing but trouble. Her water gauge is low, said her fireman. We may not have enough to get to the next station. I don't want to stay here any longer, hissed Kirsty. Let's go. They dampened down her fire and struggled on, but by the time Kirsty reached the next signal box, her fireman had no choice but to let it die completely. We can't go any further, he said, and we can't let her tank run dry. Her boiler might burst. Great, hissed Kirsty. Stuck in the snow till my frames freeze over. Some children were playing in a field nearby, having a snowball fight. They stopped when they saw Kirsty and came running over to see what the matter was. Anything we can do? Asked a little girl. Not unless you can fill up Kirsty's tank again, said her driver, and she explained about their problem. I have an idea, said another girl. She whispered to her friends, and they all began scrabbling round in the snow, bunching clumps of snow into snowballs. Good idea! Exclaimed Kirsty's driver. He and the fireman jumped down and joined in. What are you doing? Groaned Kirsty. When snow melts, it turns into water, said her driver. If we put these in your tank, we'll have enough water to get home. He then climbed up and started dropping the snowballs into Kirsty's tank. Kirsty shivered at the icy cold filling her tank, but the heat from her dying firebox was soon melting the snow and filling her tank nicely. Soon, her boiler was burning nicely and making steam. Kirsty felt warm and comfortable again. Ah, much better, she smiled. Better hurry, said her fireman. We don't want this to happen again. Kirsty blew her whistle to the children. Goodbye, and thank you! The children waved, and Kirsty puffed on to the next station, where she was able to fill her tank from the water column at long last. Kirsty still likes to watch the children playing in the snow as she passes by, in the fields and at stations. They always wave to her as she passes by, and she always whistles a friendly greeting in return. Kirsty still likes the snow, but now knows to be careful in winter weather. Snow isn't always trouble, she tells the others. Although it can get an engine stuck in a jam back on their wheels.